Well, thank you very much. Normally, when somebody gets up to give a talk like this, the first thing you say is, thank you very much for the kind introduction. But I actually have no idea what she just said. Just so you guys know, for what I just heard was Robert Murphy. Man, economy, and state. So I hope that what she said was at least true. Thank you. I want to also to give a sort of preemptive apology. I haven't given the translators my remarks in English so that they can, read it for you guys, because I don't prepare beforehand. So for those of you who are listening and you don't understand English, they may have difficulty. So it's not their fault, it's my fault. When I start talking about Austrian economics, I get very excited and I talk very quickly, so I'll try to keep it slow. The reason I don't prepare beforehand is because I like the remarks to be sort of a spontaneous order. And also, my goal when I come to a conference like this is to give the best talk by an American. And so what I have to do is listen to Peter Klein first, and then I make sure I'm 10% better. So that's, and I'm glad Peter was here for that one. So let me just, the thing a lot of you have been asking me during the breaks, the obvious thing is, oh, is this your first time in Brazil? And I actually say this is my first time in the Southern Hemisphere. And so you say, oh, well, how do you find it? And I haven't been out very much. All I've really been here is at this conference. So let me to sort of just let you guys know from the American perspective how the Mises Brazil conference, the similarities and dissimilarities between this conference and a typical American academic conference. So the first thing, of course, is the food here is phenomenal. We went to a steakhouse last night, and at this point, if I became a vegetarian, I would have no regrets. My life is complete. I've had enough more meat than any man deserves. Guido Hulsmann apparently is still there eating as we speak. He may come in an ambulance for Hoppe's lecture later today. They have his photo up on the wall because they just could not believe how much meat he ate last night. Another difference, a lot of you were asking in Sao Paulo, you say, oh, Dr. Murphy, how do you feel about our state-run airport? And you expected me to be real critical, but actually I loved the airport, Sao Paulo, because the security was very easy. I didn't have to take my shoes off. I didn't have a $3 million machine scan me and have them radio and say, how does this guy look naked? And this part is actually true. Most of the stuff is jokes, but Peter Klein went through and the metal detector went off, and they just said, "Go right ahead." They didn't even care. And if you think about it, it's because they're very rational. They looked at Peter Klein. They said, "He's not a threat." Even on the plane, he could pull out a machete, and the stewardess would be able to disarm him. So I mean, So I thought that was very rational as opposed to U.S. airline security. What else do we have? Well, these things, of course, are a bit different. We don't typically use these at the United States conferences. I feel like we're in the United Nations here with these things, that we should be discussing what to do about Gaddafi, not about capital structure. Another difference is the setup here. At a typical American conference, you wouldn't have these nice chairs. This more looks like Oprah Winfrey as opposed to, and I mean that as a compliment. I hope you aspire to be. I would switch places with Oprah Winfrey if I could. Another difference, the elevators here, we have to use, I have seen this in the United States, but it's not too often, where you have to swipe your card to be able to go to various floors. And so this part's true. I don't know why. I have a PhD. I couldn't figure out how to do it. So I was in there, I swiped it. I thought it worked. I pressed my room, but it didn't light up. So I thought, well, that's odd. But then the doors closed and it started moving. So I thought, oh, okay, there's a lag. It's like monetary policy. Okay, this is fine. But then it stopped at the wrong floor and opened, and so I realized someone on that floor, had pressed the button. So I pretended like this is where I was going, and I got off, and there was some other convention going on, and people were looking at me, and I just pretended to, and so I went back in again, couldn't get it to work, went back down to the lobby. So I was like a little child just riding the elevators. So I did it again, the doors closed. They went up to the same floor because, of course, it's very busy. So I walked out, hello again, it's me, and I asked, there was an employee there, and I said, stairs? And no, Anglais, and he went to go get someone, so I ran away. And then finally, somehow, I just had to randomly wait until someone from my floor was leaving, and that's how I got up. Another thing, and this concerned me a bit. I wrote it down because I didn't want to, or I typed it in rather. I want to get the words exactly right. So there's a similar one in this hotel, but in the one in Sao Paulo, these were the exact words. So in English, on the elevator, when you press the button, and it says, "Warning, before getting in." All right. This is, and there's another difference. In the United States, people usually wait for the punchline before they laugh. All right, so it says, "Warning, before getting in, make sure the lift is on this floor." So I don't know, if that's a common occurrence in Brazilian elevators, but that's a good safety tip. You need to let foreigners know these things. Or now here, I don't mean to insult you guys or anything. This is, again, just the observation. I'm a scientist. I need to report these differences. So Americans, of course, they're very stereotypical. They are very elitist. And so when we think of Brazil, we think of jungles and gorillas, and and so I have to admit, it was a little bit funny when at the opening of this conference you said, "Yeah, the one speaker can't become here because he was attacked by a rattlesnake." I think you should next time just say, "Yeah, a supercomputer fell on his leg and broke it, and so therefore, he was working on robotics." And then I have one more observation, but it's a little bit avant-garde. I don't know. Do you want to hear it or? Yeah. Okay. Well, Elios, I'm a man of the people. They want to hear it. Okay. So it involves the toilet. Okay. Now it's not. Originally, I was going to do research about which way the toilets flushed. But I found something far more interesting. It's not in the restrooms by where they serve the food and where they're playing the Hayek Keynes video. But it's in the one by where the books are sold. So you should do some research afterward, the men, and you can maybe take a picture with your iPhone to show the women, because it's not fair that you miss out on this. In the urinals, so you guys know the word urinal. It's the male toilet. So there's a sticker, and it says "Automatico," okay, and it's showing a diagram of a guy standing like this, and it shows these things. It's Automatico, and there's two interesting things. The first thing is the guy is naked. Have you seen this in the things? Again, it's in the restroom by where the books are sold. If you want to go see this, if you take nothing else away from my lecture, you should do this. Go look at that. So that's odd, and so I don't know, if that's some kind of crazy events you guys have at these Brazilian theaters where there's people in intermission have to go naked into the bathroom. Because I would think you would at least wear some sort of footwear for sanitary reasons, but I don't want to judge. And then the other odd thing is the guy has no arms in the picture. And I have a hypothesis. I think what it is they're trying to convey to you that, look, for someone who doesn't have arms, use this particular urinal, because Automatico, you don't have to flush it. You can just walk away. Well, that's all I have prepared. I'll take my... I guess I'm supposed to talk about something about Austrian economics. All right, well, let me be serious for a minute at least. It's very, heartwarming, or I get very enthusiastic coming to these events, that it's not just the United States. I mean, for real, in the United States now, people are very enthusiastic about Austrian economics, about liberty. They're far more than they were before. People are getting really interested in it. I've seen a change. For example, I write articles for Mises.org, and 5 years ago, the sort of emails you would get about them, I would get from college students. They say, "Oh yeah, my professor loves Hayek, and so that's why I read this. It's good stuff." But within the last few years, because of the financial crisis, the emails are coming from people who work at a hedge fund. And so it's not that they're ideological. They're coming to the Austrian school. They want to know what Austrian economists think about deflation, inflation. What do you think about QE2? Because they know the Keynesians on CNBC are crazy, right? That they know that those guys are just talking in circles, and it's not real analysis. So that's very encouraging. That we're definitely seeing some progress being made there. Now, I think you guys down here in Brazil are a little bit, it's behind in the sense that we started earlier in the United States, and so we laid the foundation earlier. But I'm just trying to encourage you that you don't know when it's going to happen. But, for years, and I'm relatively new to the movement myself, but for years, the people at the Mises Institute in the United States were doing this. I mean, you talk to Jeff Tucker and people like that. In the beginning, there was just a few of them in a little room, and they would get in the U.S. mail, typewritten or handwritten, someone saying, "I like this article by Murray Rothbard, can you send it to me?" And they would go get the book and photocopy it, right? And then put 10 pieces of paper, staple it into an envelope, and send it to the guy, and they would think, we're making a difference. Now one person in the world has this thing. Whereas now, it's all online, and they get, I don't even know how many visits they get per day, but you see the point that they were doing that for literally decades, not knowing if it was going to matter, and then all of a sudden this financial crisis hits, and we had that huge infrastructure in place. And so when it all of a sudden, conventional people on Wall Street and elsewhere in the financial sector, when they wanted to go somewhere, or just typical American households who weren't into reading economic treatises for fun, not too many people do that, but when all of a sudden, if your retirement portfolio, your 401k, or your savings drops by 40% in 1 year, which is what happened to a lot of American households, all of a sudden you're very concerned what's going on, and you want someone to answer those questions. And so it was fortunate that the Mises Institute had Human Action Online, had Murray Rothbard's What Has Government Done to Our Money, and all these other things just waiting there for when people wanted it, okay? And so it wouldn't have been fast enough if we had been waiting for that opportunity and then tried to get a bunch of donations and tried to get everything set up. We would have missed the window, right? So the point is, it had to all be sitting there waiting when all of a sudden a rush of people needed to know the answers, and there it was for them. So I just would, again, encourage you guys, you're not gonna, how can I put it? Right now you have some idea of the difference you're making, but ex post, you won't even, the things you're gonna have influence, you won't even realize until after it happens. And you'll say, well, it's a good thing we were doing these. So again, I would just encourage you, and there are two trends going on at the same time. That in the United States, the federal government, of course, is getting more and more powerful. Barack Obama is worse in every respect than George Bush was, but since he's supposedly a liberal Democrat, he sort of neutered a lot of the opposition. The people who thought George Bush was a tyrant now are overlooking those same things because it's Barack Obama, and they were so enthusiastic about it. And the same thing with George Bush. There were a lot of right-wing free market conservatives who didn't object strongly when he nationalized the banks, whereas if that had been a Democrat who had done those things, they would have been calling him a socialist, right? So there's a lot that's wrong with the American political system, but what I'm telling you is at least the American public, a growing fraction of them are learning these ideas and becoming interested in it, and so it's sort of like a race, I guess, to see which force overtakes the other one, but certainly the things we're doing are paying off, so I would encourage you to continue with your efforts down here. Okay, so I'm supposed to be talking about Austrian and Keynesian business cycle theory and how it relates to the unemployment data or employment data. One thing I think it's important to stress at the beginning, and I think Dr. Hoppe is going to talk about business cycle theory more directly in the next talk, so I won't focus on that. But I want to point one thing out, that when you're addressing a Keynesian economist or you're having a debate, they don't even know how to classify the Austrian theory. And just to give you an example, when Paul Krugman, the one time he publicly acknowledged me, he linked to an article that I wrote for the Mises Institute, and he said, okay, yes, it was on business cycle theory, and he said, yes, this is theoretically possible, but what evidence do these Austrians have that this is what's going on in modern market economies when there's a boom-bust cycle? And then Krugman gave what he thought were a lot of empirical reasons to reject the Austrian explanation. So just for those of you who are completely new to this, so the Austrians, they explain the conventional boom-bust cycle in market economies. They say it's that in modern times, the central bank will lower interest rates by pumping in more fiat money, expanding credit, money and credit, and so that makes interest rates go below their market level, right? So the interest rate is no longer serving its proper function of communicating how much savings are available to the economy, all right? Because the interest rate is a price that communicates information, and so if it's the wrong number, that messes things up. And so the Austrians say what it does is it sets in motion an unsustainable boom, and then at some point the boom collapses, usually because the central bank becomes more cautious and they stop inflating so much and the interest rates rise, and then the businessmen realize they made a mistake. Okay, so that's the Austrian theory. So Krugman is